You can engage in all the propaganda you want, but if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. The type of free fall that we are seeing with the CEDI exchange rate is a vote of no confidence by market players in the management of the economy.
That is the famous speech of the Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, who between 2012 and 2016, when the CEDI was trading way below 5 cedis, addressed several lectures on the economy in general and the CEDI specifically. Amongst others, he touted this government had the expertise to not only stem the tide, but also reverse the depreciation of the CEDI. Fast forward to this morning, the CEDI is trading at 5 cedis 77 pesos to the dollar. A situation that upsets even the President of the Republic, as he was forced to voice out his frustration in an engagement with industry giants some weeks ago.
I'm aware of the anxiety there is in business circles and through the population about the recent depreciation of the CEDI. I am extremely upset and anxious about it too. But I want to assure you that all efforts are being made to arrest the decline and restore the CEDI to stability in order to improve the competitiveness of Ghanaian industry. And I think very soon you will be seeing the results of our policy.
Well, the CEDI, with a mind of its own, paid no heed to the lamentations of the president as it continued to decline from then till now, compelling the finance ministry, after exhausting almost all the arrows in its quiver, to resort to the Eurobond market for a temporal solution.
And really, I'm very, very confident that a reversal is going to occur and that it's going to be pretty stable going forward. We have about $300 million coming in from Cocoa Board, another 600 million also from Cocoa Board in about a month or so. Today, as you know, we launched our Eurobond officially, which will be $3 billion, and that should close, within the next couple weeks or so. That would occur.
But will we be able to raise enough money to fix the CEDI's woes? Well, the Bloomberg is describing the move as a tough sales pitch. It believes Perception Ghana won't manage its finances properly once a 4-year bailout with the IMF ends next month, and the state of the CEDI will make it very difficult for Ghana to raise enough money, and investors believe in the Ghanaian economy.
Right. So that has been the behavior of the CEDI. Let me begin with Kofi Bento. What will be his comments? And this is a preliminary issue. Look at it briefly and move on to the other matters. Of course, it is an important issue. The Association of Oil Marketing Companies have also warned that they may be forced to increase their prices at the pumps if the rate of depreciation continues. There have been consumer reactions, very terrible. The president has sought to give some comfort, and the finance minister also has sought to do same. The Institute of Energy Security is predicting that the price of fuel will reach an all-time high within the second pricing window in March. The IES says fuel prices could go up by 2.5%. This they attribute to the depreciating CEDI. The stories go on and on about panic.
It is worrying, and to put it as an analogy, the CEDI is like the temperature of a sick person.
Okay.
When your body is sick in a certain way, your system heats up. The temperature is a symptom. If you don't deal with the problem, then the temperature can cause other problems. That's the best analogy I can give you. I'm saying this because what the CEDI's rate reveals is that there's something fundamentally wrong about our economy. And I don't think we have understood it. Now, whoever is dealing with it is not doing a good job. If you claim to be working hard at something, but you are not solving the problem, you don't know what you are doing, because clearly the problem is not being solved. But I don't intend to cast blame on whoever is this or that, because we all need to find the reasons why our CEDI does what it does. You know, some time back, I argued against this proposition that it was about exports and imports, that we import everything. That is post-World War economic thinking. And the world has changed so much that is no longer valid, but people still talk about it. And recently I had the opportunity to tell other people that now my theory has been proven. Last year we had a trade surplus. Our inflation is low, but the cedi is still going off. So whatever in our body as an economy is causing this temperature, it's not that. The US has the largest trade deficit in the world. The dollar is very stable. They import everything, and now they are fighting everybody. And apart from everything Donald Trump has done, their trade deficit has gone up, but the dollar is stable. That is proof that it is not that theory only that causes this temperature, which is now going to cause all those other things. Now, here is what I humbly, respectfully suggest. We have economists in this country. We have departments of economics. We have analysts. We have think tanks. We have people who should take this issue and analyze it. Let's find what causes our cedi to behave this way, because if we don't cure this temperature, it will start affecting our brain, and that's what you're talking about. It starts killing everything. We need to study it, understand it, then we can competently manage it.
Dr. Kwete, when Kofi Bento says, let's find the cause, is that not even a further indictment on the managers of the economy? We have been to Senchi, we have been to IMF, and this epileptic behavior of the cedi is still with us. And the effect is enormous. Everything else is affected.
Thank you very much. First of all, Kofi Bento's point that it is not heavy import dependence, and that we don't, but he didn't also tell us what.
It's not the only factor.
It's a critical factor, because if you can't compare us to the US. I mean, US is no longer dependent on commodity exports, raw commodity exports. And in this case where gold, look at the excitement over the money coming to cocoa board, you know, and how that is going to salvage us and so on and so forth. And you ask yourself, if it delays, and what does cocoa board do? It's not a significant part of what the exports are not even processed. So here we are, our imports of everything, almost everything we eat is imported. Industrial needs are based on our foreign exchange, reserves, and cocoa board is a big part of it, timber, gold, and so on and so forth. So I think that you have a point, but that means that until we industrialize and diversify this economy, industrialize doesn't mean we should build import substitution industries today and so on. But I think if we can add greater value to what readily earns foreign exchange to us, our cocoa, our gold, our timber, and so on, and probably we could also look at the finance and how we spend this money. I mean, everywhere, the craze these days, we're told, is that we spend so much on almost everything we import at inflated prices, okay? And what does that mean? What implications does that have? Then you are getting closer to elections where I'm happy the fiscal responsibility law is in place and so on, but how is compliance going to be? Because you have to do things to make sure that, you know, you get the vote, secure the vote, and that means you may not be so, our governments tend to be not disciplined I mean, budget deficits will occur, inflation will go up and so on. So how do we tackle this? I think that there used to be a time, I believe, we need the fiscal responsibility law, but probably we should go further and see what we can do, as other countries have done. A year to elections, what are the things we shouldn't do? And agree on this. You know, we need to have a certain agreement that manages the electoral pressure on the economic management, which we haven't. And you spend, it's like one of the things that we don't have control over. We spend a lot. We also do not have control over what money is coming outside the government budget or what the projections are. For example, Ghana recently, you know, the EU put us on the blacklist, and we're told that they've taken us out. But it looks like the inflows are not properly either controlled or monitored. I mean, we are a target of intensive and huge amounts of money laundering. We are now hearing of terrorist financing. And we do not know who takes a bulk of them, because they are also not going through the banks because of the rigid. So these are factors that we need to agree and see how we manage. But it might well be a political agreement that could take us out of it.
I see. Kuku, do you get any comfort when you listen to the minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, and he's having to depend on Cocoa Board and monies that are coming in as, you know, injection of dollar that is coming into the system, a Eurobond that's been launched? Do you get confidence that, as he says, it will be reversed as quickly as possible?
Well, comfort, confidence, these are very interesting words. I want to believe what he's saying, but I'm wondering if history really supports what he's saying. And it is because of the factor of sustainability. We've seen this prescription before. It's not the first time. So this is a repetition of the same old prescription, injecting more foreign exchange into the economy in order to arrest the decline in the value of the cedi, or if you like, the depreciation of the cedi. It's a long story. It's a recycling of the same old story. I know in the short term, in the medium term, perhaps these are prescriptions that you can operationalize, activate, and put out there. But it must come with other factors.
Okay.
Some other factors must come to bear to make this thing at least bring a certain relief. Now, you see, unfortunately, we've had a history of politicization and mystification of this particular issue of cedi depreciation. There were times when what we call cedi depreciation, we used to call them devaluation, redenomination, and another one, demonetization. All those things led to coup d'etats. There was a time, it was scary. Any government that touched that risked being overthrown. At least it's now history. We've gone beyond that. But we're still confronted with that same challenge as to how to handle it. Now, I'm not competent, really, to deal with this issue seriously. Right. So please, everything I'm saying is coming from the way I feel and have felt over the years that I've lived in this economy. So yes, industrialize, expand your export base, do all those things. I'm advising, the earlier we cut out the politicization and mystification, the better. Because look, it will be recycled. And let me be honest with you, I watched the Baumia thing you played.
Right.
He wasn't the first to start that, but he was a bit more focused and perhaps articulate, high profile, with his intellectual approach towards the issue. Some little politics there, let's be honest. It went to
a lot of politics.
Yes, there's politics there. But I'm not excluding his views on that issue. But please.
He spoke about the fact that this was bad management and people who didn't have a handle over the economy. So that ought to be said.
Yeah, but he was not the first to say so.
All right.
That's the point I am making. That before him, others had made similar points, except theirs was not as focused as his was. Perhaps with not much intellectual gloss.
Focused and sustained.
And sustained within a period of a campaign, yes. So it is legitimate for anybody to raise what he said up, bring him to the fore, and examining him then and now. I have no problems with that. Okay. But I can give you enough information and documentation to show that we have been recycling. He said they had arrested the cedi and given the key to the IGP. That's bringing some sense of humor.
Spiritually purified.
Yes, that's to bring some humor into it. But look, go check the other manifestos of other parties. They said they had arrested the cedi.
Right.
Only that they didn't tell us where they kept the key. But the cedi actually escaped jail. So unless we all agree that, look, this is a matter that if we continue to play politics with, we will not have a solution to. And each administration, and I predict, in the unlikely situation, and I show my bias here, of the NDC winning the next election, they will be confronted with the same challenge.
Yes, I see. Okay, so Sule, now,
I have a
if he says that, say, in the event that the NDC, got the opportunity to, govern, the same situation will come back.
Propaganda, counter-propaganda, same.
Simply means that the other matters he raises, the temporary fixes, should not be the way to go. The Deputy Minority Leader, James Kluchi-Aveji, for example, is insisting that the injection of $800 million of reserves from the central bank into the economy to stabilize the currency won't work beyond a couple of weeks. This is what Kuku is saying we should not approach. So the approach ought to be what the politicians have preached, particularly Nana Akufo-Addo. In the election period, he kept referring to the Gettysburg economy. We have to move away from that. We have to do industrialization. We have heard about now a blueprint that has been brought in for the purposes of, this his preaching about Ghana beyond aid. So, is there any sign that will in fact bring a permanent solution?
Well, given what we are seeing now and what we've seen in the past, I doubt if we're going to have a solution to this. It's going to be in the very near future. Perhaps maybe times would change and we would one day get people who would be bold enough to say that we would confront this issue and bear the consequences. I think the problem with the dollar is similar
what you
to...
just said about hopeful of future. Don't you suspect that 62 years ago, perhaps, this was said, and yet we are still where we are?
Well, it's possible, and sometimes the Americans and other, old democracies will tell you how many years it's taken. Sometimes, they make reference to things that happened 200 years ago and so on and so forth. Not to say that over 60 years has not been long enough, but I still think that we should be hopeful that perhaps going into the future, we may have people who may confront the issues and bear the consequences. And I was saying that the problem with the CEDI is similar to quite a number of problems that we face. And the reality is that we've not had politicians who would say, look, I want to take a long-term approach, which would not yield the results that would make people happy immediately, which then means that the likelihood of losing an election is real, but it is about the interest of the country. Look, the NDC was in power not a decade ago. We're talking about just a little over 2 years ago. And we all saw what happened to the dollar and the various measures that were put in place. In fact, there was a time when the central bank was injecting $20 million every day into the system as a measure to curb, how the CEDI was falling. It didn't work. I believe when the finance minister talks about the cocoa syndication loans and so on and so forth, I think this type of loan has been part of us since we started producing and selling cocoa commercially. During the NDC era, these whole things were brought up about cocoa syndication loans coming in, and therefore the CEDI will stabilize. There was a time when there were even restrictions on how much you could withdraw. And those of us who operate, not just here in the country and therefore operating elsewhere, you need dollar, it became a big issue. And the thinking was that, look, it is because a lot of people are withdrawing. And so you can't withdraw more than 5,000, you can't withdraw more than 10,000. We've seen all those measures. Yeah. Now, for me, the reality is that it is not as though we don't have people who know what the causes are and what the fixes must be. I don't think that the managers of the economy today would say that, look, it is because we have no clue what the issues are and what the causes are. They know. But fixing it comes with perhaps a political cost. And the options are then, do we play with what is happening now?
That cannot be an excuse that there will be a political cost. If you, in a focus, like Kokubaku says, and a sustained manner, tag a government that did not see this height of the cedi suffering at the hands of the dollar, and you consistently tag the government as incompetent.
It depends on what you mean by this height.
Incompetent on this basis. You cannot come now to give an excuse that there may be a political cost, even though you are capable of reversing the situation. After all, that is the option you presented.
No, certainly, I don't think that they would make it public that, look, we know what it takes to fix this whole problem, but then doing so would have these political consequences. As I said, look, I have no doubt that Dr. Bawumia and the economic management team, in fact, not too long ago, the same Dr. Bawumia was on a platform saying, look, in the NDC era, we cannot even recall who and who were members of the economic management team. And that was to suggest that, look, we have a team that, you know, is capable and competent of handling the situation now. And I believe that there is, at this stage, nothing so crucial, you know, in terms of the management of the economy, nothing so important in terms of the management of the economy than getting the dollar stabilized. Because the implications are quite, you know, devastating.
So I thought that you guys were actually going to be very brief about it. But since all of you are putting your hands up, let me get Kofi quickly and then see for Prof to come in.
I want to nail this because I think it's crucial. There is a thinking that the managers of the economy know what to do, how to deal with this, I have supreme confidence in Dr. Bawumia and his team. But I wish to submit that this country and its managers have not figured out how the cedi moves and what makes it move. From the times of Kwame Nkrumah, he moved us from the ECOWAS currency. It started going down. Things deteriorated. Buzia was overthrown because of this. Kweku was giving us some history. If you go down, one of Rawlins's biggest problems was the 50 cedi issue.
Are you suggesting we remove an incompetent government and replace it with another incompetent government?
No, what I'm saying is that our governments seem to suggest that they know, like Dr. Bawumia suggested in the lecture, that they know what to do about the cedi. And Kweku was giving us the history. We don't have time, we could have gone through it. Buzia was overthrown because of this. But each time, their prescriptions don't work. And I have heard all through my education life what Dr. Akwete just said, industrialization, this and this and this. And we don't have time, I can't go through. But I'm saying those solutions don't work. The cocoa bud thing is just like the analogy I gave you.
You are not serious about that. When you say
absolutely
the solution, permanent solution of industrialization.
You let me finish. Let me finish.
And pursuing the policy of Ghana beyond aid will not work.
I can go through it, but let me finish. See, this cocoa bud thing, injection, etc. It's like you have a disease-causing temperature. You're taking a painkiller. You have not solved the problem. Now, you talk about industrialization. If you give me time, I will explain to you. And I did it on Joy FM many years ago when I predicted that the service economy was going to take over this country. I was roundly insulted and told that I'm against manufacturing. I said, no, I'm an analyst. I can foresee something happening. I'm telling you, this is what will happen. Today, the service industry has overtaken the system. If you talk about industrialization, it's a paradigm fit in post-World War economics. That paradigm today does not meet the same structure. Because you can't be more efficient than China in the next 5 years. I'm not saying you shouldn't try, but there are all kinds of shifts that have happened, and you must be careful the prescriptions you give. That's why we are where we are. I'm saying, let's get the economy
advantage. We'll look where we can make some impact.
So, comparative advantage is also post-World War economic thinking. We've moved from there to competitive advantage. Comparative advantage is where you have natural resources and other things. But it's been proven that having them alone is not enough. It is what you do with them to give you competitive advantage that matters. So as a leverage, comparative advantage means nothing in present economics. It's competitive advantage. That's why Korea and Co. don't have any resources, but they combine things and create a competitive advantage. We shouldn't reduce this to an economics class. What I'm saying again is this. Let's not assume that we know what is causing this. And I started by saying that we used to say it was import and export. Last year, we had a surplus. Inflation is low. Okay, the present minister brought in 2.5 billion or so. We had a problem with it. It cooled down the temperature because we're not borrowing locally. T-bills are down. And you still have this problem.
Okay,
Let us get people to sit down and understand this thing well, because the present solutions are not working.
All right. You see, this idea that we don't know what it's, I disagree with. And these are basic things. When you talk about Korea chose a strategy of brutal industrialization after their civil war.
And they were supported by the US, and there was a Cold War dynamic there.
So the structure of the economy you are talking about is heavily industrial. And then now they've moved higher. You know, we are in the info age and they are digitalizing, they are going cyber and so on. But there's an industrial base. If you take one country after the other, except maybe Singapore, okay, that will make the difference. We encroach industrialization strategy, and that is where the political factor comes in. Given that we did not have a strong multi-party system then, the coup truncated implementation of the 7-year plan. So industrialization, and which others pursued successfully, we couldn't do.
But the currency was devaluing even under that.
China's success today is based on how it industrialized its economy within 30 days. In a very competitive pace, 30 years, sorry, and a very, which is the generational span. We have had a problem. Every government that comes has an idea of the structural reform.
And we are a resource-rich country, right?
Yes.
Raw material,
yes,
we do.
Yes, and we've done...
So there must be every
we just run the economy the way it has been from colonial times.
That's how we got to sugar factory.
We didn't diversify it.
Okay.
So it brings to you the political problem, which must be framed. How do we tackle the structural reforms in a multi-party democracy where your maximum tenure is 8 years? We haven't shifted from there. 8 years is for president. It's not necessarily for the party. But look, so far, if 8 years and the president is going, he's going with his party. That's the electorate decision. So in that context, what you ask yourself is that, how do we stabilize the structural reforms that we think is good for us? That is where the consensus, you know, is needed.
Okay.
So that you will now guarantee and say, well, though it's a democracy, and if you're going to do that, you also must look at the parties. Our parties are running elections all the time. The development agenda is extremely weak, and the capacity even within. So we need to look at how do we strengthen the developmental dimension of a
public
party,
services.
and so on. You see, you are now bringing the structure.
The public services, that's what they're there for.
Let's hear Kweku briefly. And forgive me, and I'm unable to redirect the conversation to
it's a big deal.
to quick fixes than the long-term solutions, because people are suffering the effects now.
Yes, something important.
Yes, Kweku. Let's hear Kweku. No, we'll move on from there. You want to say something again?
I can bet one thing. There is no quick fix to this challenge. It is not there. We need to be honest, bold, courageous, and admit these things. That's why I said demystify and depoliticize economics, including the depreciation of the CEDI. Then we will create the enabling environment for all of us to pursue a long-term solution, knowing that there is no quick fix.
Okay.
I think that's exactly the point that I was making. That look, and that is why I would still say that I have the strong belief that the managers of the economy, from the NDC to the MPP, we cannot say that they don't know what it takes to fix this whole cedi dollar problem that we've been having. It's about the boldness to say that, look, it would take this effort to get there. It wouldn't be one that can be achieved within the 4-year mandate that we have. And therefore, the political consequence is something that we must be ready and willing to bear. And I don't think that we've had any regime that, you know, has taken that bold decision that, look, the president, for example, on this Galamsey thing said, look, I know it can cost me politically, but I'm ready to go for it. Even here around the table, as Kofi was even saying that he doubts if our people, you know, over the years know what it takes to fix it. I think right here, he was proposing solutions.
But I don't say that's a solution, it's a proposal.
And telling us in his view what it takes to fix it. And I believe that the challenge, as I've said, is the whole thing about within the next 4 years, what must we do? And the politicization. I believe that very soon, the same NDC that was there just 2 years ago, you know, and we had the same problem, will now be telling us that if they were back, or if they are back, they would know what to do to fix it. And then the cycle keeps going on.
Thank you very much. So we'll take a break. We'll return to look at the matters arising as far as the disbanding party militias is concerned. And let's have your thoughts on what is happening to the CEDI. And let me read just one before we take the break. Kwame Sapong-Esiedu in London says that the issue of industrialization is overflogged. You need a huge population with skills to run an industrial economy. Our population doesn't afford us that luxury. We need to look at the service innovation with the limited skills we have to create viable jobs that are indigenous and fight against foreign exchange capital flight, we can learn from Singapore's Economic Development Board. Thank you very much. So let's have your views on these, including whether you think, like the now administration had accused the previous administration of, that the situation of the depreciation was as a result of bad leadership. Is that what we have? We'll be right back.
As I see,